It was 3:36 p.m. in Japan. A massive explosion shook the ground. Thick white smoke billowed into the sky, and terrified engineers ran for their lives. The Fukushima Daiichi Nuclear Power Plant, once a symbol of Japan's technological pride, had just suffered a catastrophic blast. This wasn't just an industrial accident. This was the beginning of one of the worst nuclear disasters in history. Just a few hours earlier, on March 11, 2011, the day had begun like any other. People were working, children were at school, and trains were running on schedule. Then, at 2:46 p.m., the Earth itself roared. A 9.0 magnitude earthquake, one of the most powerful ever recorded, struck off the northeastern coast of Japan. Buildings swayed violently, highways cracked open, and people clung to anything they could as the ground shook for 6 long minutes. But this was only the beginning of the nightmare. Far beneath the ocean, the quake unleashed an unstoppable force, a tsunami. Within minutes, monstrous waves taller than 15 meters, some as high as 6-story buildings, charged toward the coast. The ocean swallowed everything in its path: cars, houses, entire towns. More than 18,000 people lost their lives that day. Many swept away in seconds. But the tsunami's final target would change the world forever: the Fukushima Daiichi Nuclear Power Plant. The plant was designed to withstand earthquakes, and it did. But the tsunami waves were beyond imagination. They crashed into the plant's seawall, flooded the basements, and destroyed the emergency generators, the only systems keeping the nuclear reactors cool. Without electricity, the pumps stopped working, and the temperature inside the reactors began to rise dangerously. Within hours, water inside the reactor cores started boiling, exposing the fuel rods, the heart of the plant, to the air. Hydrogen gas built up inside, and soon, Reactor 1 exploded. The sound was deafening. Days later, Reactor 3 followed, then Reactor 4, each explosion worse than the last. The plant was in chaos. Radioactive materials were released into the atmosphere. The Japanese government ordered mass evacuations. Over 150,000 residents fled their homes, leaving behind everything they owned. Pets were abandoned, schools were deserted, and entire towns turned into ghost zones overnight. People didn't know where to go or how long they'd be gone. Some thought they'd return in a few days, but years later, many still haven't been able to. Inside the plant, a small group of workers stayed behind, risking their lives to stop a complete meltdown. They became known as the Fukushima 50, heroes who faced lethal radiation levels to manually cool the reactors and prevent an even greater disaster. They knew they might never return home, but they kept working anyway. Their courage saved millions.
Meanwhile, radiation began leaking into the Pacific Ocean, contaminating the water and sea life. Fishermen lost their livelihoods. Farmers near Fukushima couldn't sell their crops due to radioactive contamination. Even years later, traces of radiation were detected in nearby soil and water. The cleanup operation became one of the most complex and expensive in human history, a process expected to take decades and cost hundreds of billions of dollars. Globally, the world watched in shock. Countries like Germany and Switzerland announced they would phase out nuclear energy. Debates about nuclear safety intensified everywhere. People began to question, is nuclear energy really safe? Or are we just borrowing danger from the future? But beyond the radiation and the destruction, the story of Fukushima is also about human strength. Despite the fear and the loss, Japan stood tall. Communities came together. Volunteers, doctors, and soldiers worked day and night to rescue survivors and rebuild what was lost. The disaster tested the nation's spirit, and Japan responded with resilience, discipline, and unity that inspired the world.
Even today, parts of Fukushima remain uninhabitable, sealed off behind warning signs and fences. Yet, some former residents return occasionally to visit old homes, to pray, or to remember what was once their life. They remind the world that the cost of progress can be enormous when safety and nature collide. The Fukushima disaster wasn't just about a power plant. It was about humanity's fragile relationship with nature. It showed us how easily control can slip away when we underestimate the forces of the Earth. It forced us to rethink energy, technology, and responsibility. And as the world continues to chase power and innovation, one question from Fukushima still echoes: are we truly ready to control the power we create? Or are we just one mistake away from repeating high story? Enjoyed the video? Make sure to like, share, and subscribe for more.